All right, this is the time and place of the June 5th, 2024 meeting of the Boise Public Library Board of Trustees. I'll call this meeting to order and we get a roll call.
Long. Present. Lenny. Lemons. Here. Wisniewski.
Here.
Pantera. Here. 4 board members present, Lenny absent.
Thank you. Jessica, I think you have some introductions.
I do, and you'll be hearing from them later during the agenda, but we are really pleased today to have Jill Ayers and Vicki White here from Group 4. And so we will be talking about our facility.
Welcome. I think we're all really excited to hear from next up is approval of the minutes.
I move the approval of the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay. Can I get a roll call?
Long. Yes. Lemons.
Yes.
Wisniewski.
Yes.
Pantera.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you, Carrie. Next is the consent agenda. As a reminder, all matters on the consent agenda may be considered in a single motion as they are routine. If any trustee wishes, they may ask for an item to be removed and considered separately. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call?
Long. Yes. Lemons.
Yes.
Wisniewski.
Yes.
Pantera.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, our first report today is Zach Monahan, president of the Friends of the Boise Public Library. Is Zach on?
I don't see that.
I have not seen. Okay, we will move forward to Camille Franks from the foundation. Camille.
Thanks, Nikki. Good morning, everyone. We are continuing to move through our different operational projects, and we also continue to work on identifying different ways to support the library. Our next meeting will be next week, and that is all I have for this month. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Camille. All right, Jessica, your report.
Thank you. Just a couple things for you this morning. I'm sorry that Zach was not able to join us. We have been able to install a donation from the Friends that we requested was for a family workstation, and it is now here on the second floor. So if you get a chance, it is on the west side of the computers on the second floor, and it is designed for someone to come in and use a computer with a small child. And so we're really pleased with that donation. Thank the Friends for that. I want to highlight for you a library event that's happening this Sunday. We participate every year in the Treasure Valley Reads program, which is designed for the local libraries to build community by selecting books that then we do community programming around. This year, the Treasure Valley Reads Libraries Project selected 2 local authors, Tomas Isa with Delivery and Lynn Havens with Chokecherry. And so their keynote event will be this Sunday at 7 o'clock at the Boise. There are also a lot of other different programming. So you'll see we've got bookmarks that advertise both the titles that were selected, but then also give you a link to the other libraries that either book clubs or workshops or discussions. I did want to give you an update on a staff opening, and usually that's not something that I would raise in a board meeting, but because of the high visibility of this position, I wanted to be aware of it, public as well. But our mental health coordinator position is now open because of a resignation. The person in that has left the library. So we have done some work, and I really want to credit Senator Chase and our information services team that has stepped in to make sure that services continue to go smoothly, that the relationships with the organizations are maintained. Pop-up libraries are maintained. Going on right now. It's going on right now. So that will continue, and we will be having that done to have that filled as quickly as possible, since we do know how important that role is. But wanted you to be aware of that. know that we've got a real great plan in place for any of the relationships or the engagement we have.
Does that position require a social work license?
It depends on what you mean by social work license. And that's one of the things that we're gonna really make sure we're clear about. Is it a licensed social work? Is it somebody with a social work background? We're using this opportunity to work with HR and really make sure we have a job description that matches the role that that position is best suited.
Actually, not specifically about this position, but in general, when someone at that level leads the organization, is there a formal sort of exit interview process that you go through and sort of look then at the position and what maybe you would want to tweak as a result of the feedback that that person provides you?
I'll start with anybody who leaves. It is encouraged to complete an exit interview at any level. And I think that's really important, particularly with our turnover. That data has been really helpful for us to talk to HR about. Why do we continue to see turnover in specific roles? And so we really do always encourage people to complete that exit interview with us. And then in this particular case, as you said, at certain levels, it is a really important opportunity to really think about what is our current business need? How do we make sure that we have a job description that truly matches what that is, and then work with HR on what is the right experience and qualifications for that. All right, as you might remember from last month, are preparing for the implementation of House Bill 710, the Children's School Protection Act, which will go into effect on July 1st. The work that we've been doing is continue to put together the materials for staff and public. We've met with our community engagement team a couple times to make sure we'll have all those materials both on our website, but also in all our locations starting July 1st. And then we also had a request from the mayor's office to present to council. And so I will be on Tuesday, June 11th at the 3:30 work session. I'll be presenting a slightly shorter an overview and a little bit more of the process that we went through to come up with the policy for council. And I understand you'll be able to join. So they wanted to hear both from me, but also from. And I'll send out a link so that you guys can watch that as well. And then finally, I want to preview the July Board of Trustees meeting, which I'm really excited about. July marks our 6 months in our new strategic framework for impact. And so we are going to be coming back, sharing with you some of the efforts that have come from that and what has been accomplished. And then I'm also really excited because we will have James Souter, our lead analyst, come and preview some of the new data that we would like to move, our reporting that we would like to move starting with fiscal year 25 review, so that you can see some of the work that he's been doing. We would like to have a discussion about some of the data that we've currently been reporting on, but give you a preview of what we think the new data could look like. More trends, more opportunity for analysis. We're gonna recommend removing some of the data that we don't think is important to any longer. That used to be something that we would. So we'll have a discussion about that in July, but wanted you to know that was. So. And with that, stand for questions.
Questions for Jessica? All right, thank you. Ed, Zach is here, our legal back.
Oh.
It's not like an action. I like, Zach, are you ready to give your report? I think I see you up there. We were going super quickly through everything this morning, so we got to it a little early.
Okay, I apologize. I was searching for the Zoom link and was a couple minutes late. But I have a relatively short update. The Friends did just conduct a very successful sale at the Bound Library. We had a lot of community engagement, and so we did just over $11,000 in sales, and also had an additional 500 plus dollars in membership fees. We're currently trying to back into exactly how many new members joined as part of that process. But it's part of a continued trend of a high level of participation in the branch library sales. So we do appreciate Jessica and Emily and their branch teams accommodating us, and look forward to continuing that to reach out to new parts of the community. Other than that, we're looking to confirm the schedule for our fall sales, looking to add a couple additional dates in addition to what's already scheduled at Hillcrest. Other than that, I have no new updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Zach, you missed my update because I was able to share that the donation that you made for the family workstation, that's been delivered, and so it's actually now on our second floor downtown. So if you get a chance to come by and see it in use.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. We'll likely bring Allie, who's the head of our PR committee, by to take some photos and put that up on our social page, and also communicate that to membership so they're understanding what they're funding.
Wanted to say thank you again too for the merch opportunity. Getting to get some summer reading shirts for my kids has been really fun, and sharing it with neighbors, and it's just been really great to have that opportunity. So thank you guys for doing that, and hope to see more in the future.
Yeah, we're really happy to do that. It's been successful so far. Starting next week, they'll be on sale in the bookstore, and we'll probably have to refresh our inventory. What we found is what's in high demand is kids' shirts. So our next order will be a higher percentage of children's shirts and a lower percentage of adult shirts.
Awesome, thank you, and thanks again for the donation for the workstation too, and share that with your board and volunteers too. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll let them know. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. All right, next up, we have our master facilities plan update. You want to, that's already introduced you. Welcome up.
Great. Well, I'm so happy to be here. We've been looking forward to this trip for a couple months now, and we're finally making it happen. I'm Jill Ayers. I'm an associate principal with Group for Architecture Research and Planning. We are a San Francisco Bay Area based architecture and planning practice. We are celebrating 50 years in practice this year. We are a small majority women-owned firm, and one of the things that takes us nationally is public libraries. We do have a national practice in that. Let's see if I can. There we go. Wanted to introduce you briefly to our firm and what we do. Take you quickly through the process that we're just starting on here in Boise for the public library. Give you a few first impressions from our walkthrough of all of your libraries yesterday, and then just an opportunity for any questions or things that you'd like. So as I mentioned before, we practice in libraries nationally. We've done some libraries in Spokane. This is a few in Ohio, Kentucky, and Kansas. We're so privileged to be able to work in the public library space. It's one of the most important services that we provide to the community, and we're so fortunate to be here with you today. Library master planning for large urban library systems is one of our particular areas of specialty, and we've worked with some of the biggest and best libraries around the nation, and are happy to be here with you. Want to make sure that you know that doesn't mean we know what the answer is for you yet. It just means we have a lot of questions to ask about who Boise Public Library is, the communities we want to serve, all of those things. This is the philosophy that we go into these planning efforts with, which is that the library you need is the best one you could build and operate. There's all kinds of complexity with that. So we're going to go through all of that as part of this process. And the goal is a plan at the end that is not a roadmap that has step by step by step, but something that gives you those destinations, what it looks like when it's right for Boise. And gives you something that's flexible and agile, because we know over a 10 to 20-year period, something's going to change. Some new opportunity is going to come up that you didn't expect. Something that we thought was going to happen won't. And so giving you a plan that allows you to adapt and pivot when you need to is one of the things we want to do. So for this project, some of the things that we've heard from the city and the library about the goals are, of course, we want to know what the library system for Boise's future looks like. Number of libraries, how big they are, generally where they are, types of services and spaces we want each of them to provide so that the community is well served. Understanding staffing needs, and that's not necessarily, we're not going to give you a staffing plan for these, but we want to make sure we're sensitive to the fact that your operating dollars don't just, increase proportion necessarily to size. We want to make sure this is something you can afford to operate over time and operate well, robust hours, robust staffing. Sequence for branch improvements, which one of these, all other things being equal, might be one to start with? Is it the one that might add the most space first? Is it the one that's in the area of greatest need first? All kinds of things that we'll look at when we're putting that sequencing strategy together. And I just had this quote here because someone mentioned it. We wanted to be both rigorous and inspiring. So that's no small task, but we're going to do our best. The library finished the strategic framework last year and rolling well along with that. We want to make sure we're consistent with that. We're not trying to go back over any ground about who the library is or what's important to this community, but making sure that the facilities are there to support the library moving forward. We know there's some other things going on in the city. We've been hearing a lot about the new modern zoning code and the changes that may be coming as a result of that. There's the climate action plan. There's all kinds of things that Boise is working on to make sure this is a vibrant, strong, resilient community for the future. So we want to make sure we're in line with that. And of course, that comes from talking with as many people as possible. Library staff, stakeholders, partners, folks out in the community. We just had a good meeting this morning about what that community engagement plan is. So all that's to come. The schedule is, we're still kind of playing around with when things are going to happen. We have a little bit of a slow start, but there's been stuff happening with the state legislation that we wanted to make sure we knew where we were landing on that before we got going. So that is pushing we just talked this morning about starting the community engagement kind of July, August, September time. So that sounds like that's a good time of year to start talking to people around here about what they want. But in the meantime, some of the things we're looking at are the data that we do have available to us. How are people in Boise using your libraries now? Are they only using the one that's closest to their home, or are they moving around? Do they come down to town on Sunday because the other ones are closed? We want to make sure we understand how people are using their libraries. We're getting going on a staff survey, which is, nobody knows the community as well as library staff. They just know it. And they know your buildings really well. So it's a good opportunity for us to hear from the folks who are on the front line about what's working well and what needs to be improved. And so we'll have that all kind of underway by the time we start here. Any questions so far about the process? I had, in case anybody's interested, I grabbed a few examples of other master plans on my way out the door from my library, my desk. If you're interested in looking, they're there for you. But a nice report that's as much data supported as we can get, but it's not so wonky that it turns people off. This really is about the story of Boise and your library and the kinds of positive impacts. Yes, sir.
So, I have this question. We have a history here that perhaps your other clients haven't been. I just wondered if you could maybe speak to the notion that there was a plan in place, there was millions of dollars on designs for everything, the whole thing kind of came raveled. And so you're not just starting from scratch, you're starting with a history that some members of the community feel very strongly one way or the other about. So maybe speak a little bit to how you think you're going to be able to adapt to this environment that is perhaps not the same as you might have found in San Diego, where they didn't have that history that they're having to overcome as they move forward.
Excellent question, and we've heard about, I assume you're talking about what happened like 4, 5, 6 years
Yeah,
ago?
right, for the last, the oral administration, the last executive. So it's not this particular administration, both, but it's still, the community is well aware of it. I'll just say that people that I talk to, very strong feelings one way or the other. About
Okay.
how it was done and about either their disappointment or pleasure at the outcome.
So, an excellent thing for us to keep in mind. We were talking yesterday again about the master plan that actually Boise had in place for libraries from 2000, she was like a little over 20, almost 25 years ago now. Big, bold vision, there were gonna be 8 or 10 branches throughout the city, and New Main Library may have been part of that too, but it was very ambitious, and then part of it got implemented and the rest didn't. So it's not just the main library that didn't happen the way it was expected, but a lot of, we're hearing there's a lot of places in the community that have expectations of something that may or may not come to pass right now. So this is where we want to make sure we're taking the time to really listen to all of those people. There's people, as you say, on both sides of that. We want to make sure we understand the why behind each of those positions. And then the first part of our engagement in starting August, September is going to be this sort of open listening phase. But after that, we're going to come back a second time. Say, here's what we heard in the first round. Here's the things that we heard were important to you. Here are the things that are influencing the library's options about how large the libraries to plan for. What do you think? And at that moment, hopefully we will put our story together in a way that people, even if the outcome isn't what they were hoping would come out of this or feel strongly about now, they'll at least be able to see how. And if we need to take at that moment another step, go back, do a little bit more work, come back and get the plan to where it's right. We're gonna do that. Like I said, we want you to have a plan. It's the most depressing thing in the world. In my professional world, is I hand you one of these and you can't do anything with it. And 25 years later, someone is holding this up and being like, "There's a plan you never implemented." So we want it to be something. Any other questions about the plans? Okay. So some of the things we saw yesterday really quickly, you have amazing library staff. And I met yesterday a mover and shaker from the Library Journal, which is amazing. And also a librarian of the year, which is also amazing. But I didn't, it wasn't until I found out either of those things that I was starting to think that your staff, right? They're very thoughtful, caring people who are doing the best that they can, sometimes with optimal spaces where lots of things are crammed into them, but they do the best because it's all about the community and it's all about meeting each person where they are and having that sort of welcoming experience for everyone. Having someone leave with something that they didn't even expect, something positive, changing their lives for them. So that's good. We saw that your libraries are truly places in this community. You've got some beautiful architectural buildings in here, but even more than that, you've got places where people want to come. There's people who come to the library every day, and that's for reasons. It's there. It's a wonderful place for people that has meaning in their lives. You've got a lot of good spaces that some are older than others, some are bigger than others. And part of our work here is going to be about which ones are flexible enough to be able to change, update, for near-term needs, for longer-term needs, and which ones aren't going to be able to do that so easily, and where might we want to think about different facilities that can meet those needs. We want to make sure we're understanding users, not just the people who are using your libraries now, but the people who aren't using your libraries now. I had a good conversation with Simon at Houston yesterday. I said, who aren't using the library? This community, if all of the things being equal, you'd see all of them. Who aren't you seeing? So, got an Asian American market right there. Those people can't get them in the library. And then I think across all of the libraries we visited, people say, we just don't see teens in. It's really tough to get teens in the library. And so what does that mean for us for planning? And what does it mean for the opportunities moving forward? I don't have an answer to that. Just a question for now. We did hear about some needs. Each library we asked the question, if you could wave a magic wand right now and change anything, don't hold back. I think the number one answer that we heard to that question just generally was we need more places for people. People come into the library wanting a place to sit and meet with someone else. We want, they want a place to have a remote meeting because they can't do it at home, a place to have a homeowners association meeting where they can get everyone around the table. We cannot keep up with that demand. We've got one group study room, and we've got this one kind of meeting room that's a little bit of an odd size. And so we end up putting groups of 6 in the meeting room when it's okay, right? And this is not something that's unique to Boise. You're seeing this all over the place. This is a shift that all libraries are experiencing. People come to the library and want to be there. They don't stay there and do things while they're there. And then just where are the opportunities? I snapped a picture of this building and what it used to be back in the day. It's a testament to a well-built building that can be reinvented during the course of its life. And so where are the opportunities for this building perhaps to be reinvented again for this next generation of library service? Is it an opportunity? Is it the right strategy? I don't know. But lots of things that we're going home with, questions that we have. Fun problems to try to solve. So that was my quick run through. Any other questions for me? Something we want to make sure we look at in particular?
How do you imagine we as a board can support and participate in this process?
I love it when a board wants to participate in the process. Like you are you are wonderful representatives of the community. So having that here and helping us be that sounding board for here's what we heard from the community that are getting it right. That's such a wonderful opportunity. And then, a question that I don't think I have in here. Question for you is what will make this plan more successful from your perspective as a board? Like when we come before you next, April, May with the plan, what are you going to want to make sure it helps you do?
Yeah, I think the community input part is important. And as you were saying that, one piece of that though, that I didn't, at least personally, I don't think I had as much information with the last plan when that all came up. So I'm curious, we're asking the community for information, but it would be good at some point that we're sharing back kind of the state of the facilities. And I mean, the general community member hasn't been in the back room at Collister
Right.
and seen all of that. So I'm curious if there's a way as part of that process, there's a little bit of information sharing as well as collecting the community's opinions too. Because we want the opinion to be formed on them all having the same information we have, and that's the piece that I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious how we can do that. I think that would be.
The ideal is we're using that second point of engagement to bring back what we heard in a way that we're testing the story of that, right? We're testing that where we've captured the need and we've captured sort of the reason for the need and why it's important for the library to do this. And at that moment, based on how people are responding to the ideas that we bring, if we haven't given them enough information, they'll tell us that, I don't know, this is something we wish you told us. What did you think to look at this, right? And we'll have the opportunity to go back. And if we did it well, then they'll feel informed enough to make that decision at that moment or say, this feels like something that I can do. But yes, we don't want to get to the end and hand you this and have them all be like, you want me to read 120 pages to find out what the recommendation is.
So I think that just back and forth community engagement is going to be really important for us. And then, I mean, I'll just say we tend to be a pretty want to be involved, passionate board. So wherever you can connect us or helping getting community input. I know last time we participated in the feedback sessions. So yeah, wherever you can plug us in that we can be supportive and helpful. You have 5 people that are all willing to
Fantastic.
engage.
Thank you.
We encourage you to bring us in, however we can be helpful.
I'll call you on Friday.
And promoting our networks, we're big cheerleaders of the libraries and we all have different backgrounds and represent
Right.
different parts of the community and I like to use my voice to, share it with, to get survey respondents because I
Excellent.
know how hard that can be
Excellent.
sometimes, things
Yeah.
like that. So however we can use our networks.
That'd be great. And I know Jessica will bring you, meetings when we're not here, she'll bring you some updates to, if there's much information.
Other questions? Comments? Yeah, I think it hit on all the points I would expect to see and more, so I think it looks like really good work and I'm excited.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time today.
Thank you.
All right, next.
I learned stuff about aerial links. So much just today, just following Jill and Vicky around.
I mean, kind of to the point I was making, like when we toured all the facilities, like. We have no idea.
Wait till the
like,
next time I take you guys out.
Right.
You're gonna know how to get, you're gonna know that there are two ways to get onto the roof. About crossing the Golden Euston, which is something to do.
Yeah, and pros and cons for like having a really good staff that's able to do all these programs, but people don't know that in the background, there's like this storage room, like packed full, so there's like a better resource to serve, but that's not something that's visible.
Well, I think to your point, Vicky, too, I know when I engage in community, people are very focused on their home branches as they normally should be, but our task and what I hope the community can see a little bit is the totality of the system, right? And the big picture. I think the sequencing is what we're all very eager for. I can speak for myself. I'm eager for some sequencing and thinking because it feels like eating the elephant to think about, where to prioritize things. But I think being able to take that systemic view, not just for us, but for the community, would be really interesting. So they see all the moving parts and the totality of the incredible work the staff does with the resources that they.
All right,
So you get a sense of from the city as to how long the runway is in terms of their vision. How, okay. Are they open to if the research says we need 4 more branch libraries, right? The city, I mean, is the city council and the mayor going to say, you guys are out of your mind? We have, and maybe over the next 25 years, we can do 4 libraries, but I'm just throwing this out in terms of, again, it's back to the problem of the last time, which was the vision did not match reality, and you ended up with this expectations and creation burn, and I don't want to see that again. Honestly, I think that's what we all want to avoid, something that it doesn't. So the community, but it is within the realm of possibility.
I agree with you that that's something that everyone wants to avoid, it's that same experience, and I think when Jill had the slide up about what is the right, but maybe I'll ask you to say it again, is the bit of what is the right library with the right services that the community can afford is part of that ongoing work. And so I think going back to the community, one of the things we have been talking, Public Works is heavily involved in this. We will be bringing in all the different parts of the city that need to help us make sure that we're going back to the community with that additional context. To your point about we also need to be using this as an opportunity to share. That is where we will have a real alignment to make sure that we are putting forward something that truly, if we understand the costs to both any improvements from current assets, potential future assets, but really understanding what's the cost to run the business. And I think that's one of the things that Jill mentioned, the staffing piece, and this is where we're really to align. Where do we make sure that we are using the expertise that before brings us but using the process to really make sure we've got the right cost model for facilities, for technology, for staffing, for materials. And so when I talk about the facility plan, I feel like I'm always talking about the facility plan that will need to have those components in, because that is the piece that I think people want to make sure it's not just a building, it is the services, it is the staff, it's the materials. And so having a process that really involves that multiple step with the community, I think is how we're going to make sure that we are both hearing and discussing. So I really like what you said about using it as an opportunity to reset how the city and the library engage with the community, but also be really thoughtful about the trade. So a lot of that is funding dependent.
So, you know, if we're taking too much time. I think the other sort of tension that I see, and I see it when I see other state, especially with the universities, which is this notion of a building that meets the utilitarian need and the notion of showcase. Right, just, you know, an architectural showcase that is going to be something that it says something about the state of the city and its, you know, where we've grown as a community, and I think that was part of what they were looking for. Old design, last design. And so there is sort of that tension as well. Aside from just the physical, what do we need in terms of the number of conference rooms, square footage, and all of that kind of component, but then sort of architecturally, are we going to make something that's have a vision beyond just utilitarian use, and where is that price point? Because that can be a big factor as well.
I agree, and I think that'll be something really important to get people on that. What's the right? We want it to be rigorous and inspiring, but also the rigor on, does this match? So it's well said.
Thank you. I think good input. Sarah, are you ready to go policy review?
Absolutely. So, as per usual, each month you review a section of policy with the goal of getting through all of it by the end of the fiscal year. We're compressing some things together because we've gone back and forth on a few and we've revisited. So this is looking at section 7.0, use of meeting rooms, and section 8.0, displays and exhibits. We're not making any recommendations for any changes at this time. And as you'll see when you review or when you reviewed, we did do some updates in 2022 to update to match Idaho code and to freshen up our rules and move them forward. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
My only comment was going to be, I think we looked at him pretty closely in 2022 for those who were not here at that time. So for what that's worth. Comments or questions? There is no action on this one because there's no changes. So if there's no comments or inputs.
Thank you.
We took all our changes last time. Yeah, no, that was great. Okay, next we have Emily with fiscal year 2025 budget.
Yes, well, I'm gonna welcome Lynette and Maggie as well. Bring in the reinforcements whenever we talk about budget, right? All right, well, I am the lucky one that gets to talk about what we are requesting as part of the 25 budget bill. And I believe some of you have met Lynette. Maggie is new. So Lynette and Maggie both are part of the budget office. And Maggie's our new budget analyst. And Lynette is helping transition her into this role. So get to know Maggie. She's going to be around and I'm sure I'll get to work with her more in the future. So we're going to talk a little bit about the citywide. Oh, sorry, Lynette, you got the remote. Or was Carrie have the remote?
We're getting it.
All right, so what we're hoping to cover today is we're gonna talk a little bit about the budget preparation process, some milestones for the Act 25 budget. There we go. And then we'll talk at a high level about some of the 25 budget information. Lynette and Maggie will talk more about the citywide perspective, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what's happening specifically with the library budget. So to kick us off, I'm gonna hand it across the table to talk a little bit about the budget preparation process.
So just to give an overview, by law, the city of Boise does have a balanced budget, or we can't budget expenditures that exceed our revenues. The city departments, they ensure funding next fiscal year that will align with strategic priorities, community, and the budget process ensures there's sufficient funds to run the business for the ongoing fiscal year. This is our milestones for this year. So some of these dates will look familiar. May 21st, we had our first city council budget workshop. Here we are on June 5th, and on June 14th, the recommended budget document will be released, and there will be a second city council budget workshop on June. So the budget consists mainly of three funds. The general fund provides the annual operating budget for the library. Capital fund covers major projects, major equipment, construction, care and maintenance. And then the heritage funds represent the library's donations and integrated library system. So the general fund provides the annual operating budget. It's primarily supported by property taxes. It covers the cost to run business for a fiscal year from October 1 to September 30th. At the end of the fiscal year, the unspent budget does not carry forward. The exception to this would be the capital fund, capital projects, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But generally, the general fund budget ends September 30th and October 1 in the budget. Net revenue.
All right. When looking at the revenue portion of the budget for FY 25, we anticipate bringing in about $515,000 of revenue. With the top three drivers, the Links Consortium members, where they participate from the system portion, the system share, that is roughly $245,000. The courier revenue, that will bring in recovery revenue of about $178,000. And then miscellaneous revenue, where it is from lost or damaged materials, would be around $40,000. When looking at the chart for revenue, you can see system share is by far the biggest portion, courier 34%. Then it really drops into smaller portions of miscellaneous revenue and then other types of revenue. The operating expense budget, this is the library's portion of the city general fund. That is 5%. When we look at just the library portion of the operating expenses, it's 18.9 million. With personnel being by far the biggest category of 8.7 million. The indirect costs, 6.2 million, and we're going to talk more about that in just a few more slides. Operating at 2.2 million, and materials at 1.7. So the library's operating portion, this is just going to show you the chart where personnel is about 46% and the indirects around 33%. The operating expenses at 12% and materials around 9%. This is the citywide graph. You'll see that a little over 50% is public safety. That's the police and fire departments. Parks and Rec is 14%. The support departments, that's also what we call the indirect costs,
That is the accumulation of all those internal departments, 14%. The library portion being 5%.
Right, so I get to talk about some of the exciting things that are coming into the 25 budget. So we were really excited this year to get another 350,000 in one-time funds to add to our ongoing materials budget. So we're really excited about that. It'll help us keep up with demand, and we've got a great department in BTS that looks at, where is that money going to be best leveraged and how can we break that up to make sure we're spending it in the right ways. So we have a standard ongoing materials budget, and every year we request a little additional to see if we can offset the demand. And this year we were able to secure, we are asking for, if we'll get about an additional 350,000 to that. So that's really good news. And as we roll out the strategic plan, we're really looking at that increasing impact strategic objective. So we are really excited. We are requesting what we are calling the dream branch, but really we want to look at, if we were to fully staff one of our locations with a really robust staff, what would that impact look like for the community? So what we're asking for is 4.5 new FTEs to be placed at Full-A-New-Stick to really track what it would look like to have a branch staffed the way we think they should be staffed, and what would that look like for the community. And by focusing it on one location, we can really look at the data. What are we doing at Full-A-New-Stick? What are we missing at some of the other locations? It'll give us the opportunity to really track the data and show what that investment is doing for our staff morale, for our impact to the community, for our ability to build partnerships. So we are really excited about the opportunity to be able to staff Full-A-New-Stick and then track that data and really see what that means for the community. Just as a side note, part of that, we are requesting 4.5 new FTEs to be at Full-A-New-Stick. We did trade in or negotiate or lose one full-time library admin position as kind of part of that process. So when you look at some of the numbers, it may look like we're not getting a full 4.5 FTE, but there was some trade-offs in that negotiation or that process to help us get there. So we just wanted to call that out in case anybody saw that. So it didn't look funny on the numbers. I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we decided to choose Full-A-New-Stick for this. It's one of our busiest branch locations. They do a lot of circulation. There's just a lot of traffic of materials through that and people in the building. But also it's a community that really has a high potential for impact based on the needs of that community. There are a lot of schools around there that we historically have not been able to work with in the way that we'd like to. There are some socioeconomic factors in that community. So we think not only is it a really busy branch, but it has a lot of potential to really positively impact that community. So we thought that that was a great location to roll this out initially. We're working with James and our leadership team to really identify what metrics we want to track. How are we going to do that? We get the baseline information now. So once we start tracking some of that, we'll really show what that investment has done for the community. So I anticipate we'll be back with this group talking about some of that, but we are thrilled to be able to launch this and really watch how this impacts the community, what it'll allow us to do moving forward. The other piece of that is we have requested another book sorter to also be placed at Full-A-New-Stick. So we can see what that does for staff time, how that frees up staff to work out on the floor and with the public, hopefully get out into the community. So really, when I say build, we're building our ideal branch, let's see what that can do. So excited about that. We also were able to make some adjustments to some needed staffing levels within other parts of the system. So we are requesting funds to bump one of our collection development librarians from a 0.8 FTE to a full-time position. And then again, with some of the reclass work that happened recently, the bumping up what was the assistant supervisor in our circulation department to a supervisor level position. So all of those will roll into the FY25 budget request process. I'll keep everyone posted.
Questions at the end, or
You can ask them now if you want.
so the $350,000 library materials, presumably library materials has a certain budget here.
Mhm.
And is there an automatic, is there a inflationary factor that's always figured in and then this is on top of that? Or we're going from, can't remember the number, from 1.8 million and now it's adding 350,000 for this one time. It's back to 8 million. It's always been 1.8 million. It's just always. And then every year you see time. It's just trying to figure out how.
Yes, so, and I'm looking at everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, there is not an inflationary process built into the budget, so it is each year us requesting additional funding to keep up with the inflation, collection demand,
Right, yeah.
all of this.
I would just quickly note, kind of back to what I was saying before, that people don't see like all the back rooms that the book sorter, after seeing specifically at Colin Eustick, just like the mounds of books. I mean, they're very much manually have to have a person put it in like all these different tubs. And so I can see with that insight, and I'm going to share that insight, that I think that can make such a big impact, and focusing staff resources on something, you know, really impactful to the community instead of in the back room moving books around. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that.
Well, we see that here at Maine, right?
Yeah.
How we can start to look at what we're doing staff wise differently because of that.
Yeah, and it's also sort of fun, like I like to kind of watch the book sorter and actually tell it's sort of like a tourist attraction.
That was a question when I presented to council. One of the questions was, will there be a window at Colby
Yeah, I just
District? And I had to tell them no, somebody's it's in the
It'll
back.
be in the back, yeah. Although I have seen kids put the book in and then look through the stuff. Maybe you can still do that. Safety wise.
Also have to, yeah, the Golden District Library was chosen because it's a very diverse community.
It is.
There's a high population, 127, families that come here. So I think it will be a good reflection of the community that we're serving, plus the undeserved community.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We, there was a lot of thought that went into this, and exactly all of the reasons you're saying. The other thing that I also learned yesterday on the tours is they serve a lot of homeschooling families. So there's just opportunity throughout that area to really have a significant impact. And they're there and want it, and we just haven't had the bandwidth to get out into the community, and this will let us do that. So it'll be fun to watch that and then report back what we're seeing, because I think in our minds, we think we know what that will look like, but I bet there's some really amazing things that we can do that we haven't realized at this point. So. All right, back over to you.
I'm gonna talk about the personnel budget for a moment. As Lynette mentioned, it is the largest portion of the budget at 8.7 million. And so the pieces that went into building it this year, there's 3% base increase for staff. There's funding for one-time merit incentives, maintaining low, no-cost health insurance, and there will be per seat employer increases. So you won't see the employee increases, but on the employer side, that'll be in the library budget. The rates are going up from 11.18 to 11.9796. So it's a 7% increase just on the per seat.
All right, we talked about coming back to the indirects and a better understanding of what that means. So you can see the list of departments that are internal departments, the accounting, finance, budget, depreciation, that's not a department, but that is a thing, the big dollar thing. Facility maintenance, the HR folks, the recruitment payroll piece, IT, it's our technology portion, legal, mayor's office, and so forth. So all of that combined is the 6.2 million, with IT being the biggest one at almost 2 million, depreciation at 1.7 million, the facility maintenance 1.1 million, HR, the recruitment payroll, that's 524,000. And DFA combined, that's Department of Finance and Admin. Those portions add up to 285. So any questions on this
Okay.
I'm sorry, so those, these figures are. The library's budget is 5% of the total city budget. So if I looked at whatever, IT, is IT 5% of the total city's IT budget? You sort of following my logic, or is it proportioned based on how much of those services the library is using historically? And then what happens if there's an anomaly?
So our accounting group, they would be able to come in and give a robust presentation about how they call them drivers or factors, how those are calculated. So some of the metrics are based on head count. So where it comes to like HR payroll, I think that's more based on head count. Okay, not by percentage, but head count. So different areas have different what they call drivers or calculations that go toward this. It's way more complicated than I would be able to speak to in a thorough way. So I would say that if you want that kind of level of information, our controller would be the person who could give information.
So then one more sort of question is, in the state, we have pretty average numbers that roll along every year in the same kind of thing. Legal services or HR or whatever. Unless you suddenly used a ton of that service. And then the next year, your figures want to suddenly hit with a one-time big increase, or you in my particular case, we had to come up with money out of the existing budget. So if we get hit with enormous legal expenses, which is certainly not out of the question in light of HB 170. 70, whatever. Are we next year going to suddenly have, or are we going to have hit with a assessed and increased cost, or is that all just absorbed the overarching city budget? Trying to understand. We have to suddenly squeeze our acquisition budget or lay off 2 people to cover the cost of that.
We're very careful to watch that we take this as like a side topic. So they tackle the indirects, and you will see big increases from year to year, but it is covered by the overall tax support. Where we look at, materials, keeping whole with materials, or we look at the operating expenses, we go through every line and make sure those will operate and be functional at the levels they need. And we spend a lot of time with Emily and the management team to assure that. So it isn't like an increase of the indirect has all of a sudden taken our operating budget in half, like to cover it. That is not how we approach the budget at this point. And then at fiscal year end, if there have been overages for whatever the reason of the indirects, there's contingency held and it is covering those overages. They haven't come around and said, library, you need to hold back to cover for increases with the indirect. That has not happened at this point. Okay, good questions. All right, these are the trends with materials. And so to your point about inflation, you can see that it's just a tick above 24's budget where 25's landed. So where we got the 350,000, it really just brought it up to about that level. And then I think it goes into the strategic conversations with the library about what are their most highest priorities they're trying for. And that staffing model was a really big thing they were trying for, and the sorter and those other things. So I think that speaks to how they were balancing like what the asks were and where the materials did land. Kathy Stalder's team, the acquisition team, they have wonderful information about materials and inflation costs. We know that digital material line, highly an inflationary issue, costs a lot more than it used to, and also a higher demand than it used to be. So I'm sure Kathy's group will bring you coming presentations on that. Yep. So this just shows you the trend over time with materials. Yep, so the way that 350 works is that next year, you would have to come back with an ask to land at whatever you're striving for the new year.
And as a point of clarification, the 1.7 million is including the 350 additional
Yes.
one time. We just want people thinking we're going to be over 2 million.
Yeah. It didn't go up and above.
Yeah.
Good point.
And as you can see, Lynette alluding to it, there is a very conscious decision on how we spread that with adult youth digital materials, particularly, we're thrilled that our youth materials continues to circulate. The digital material where we are seeing, just in this first half of the fiscal year, 34% increase in digital users, a 36% increase in their usage. As Lynette mentioned, those materials are more expensive. They're becoming more expensive. We are also trying to, when we can, to purchase them, not lease them, but they're, those vendors have moved to a leasing model. So, but we also, that's where we're seeing particular adult users are going. So it is a real important to us to really every year think very carefully about the right balance across all those different moments.
And to your point, and so Tully doesn't have a heart attack back there. We've just loaded the 350 in digital materials. Kathy's team
Yeah.
will take a look at where they really want it to go, and we may
That's a very good
recalibrate
point.
that around. We just needed to get it in, so it was being tracked on the bottom line,
Yeah.
so we could speak to it. But they may decide to pull some out of digital and put it in the youth. They do such a good job of tracking, and they know where they is. So Tully, this is not set in stone. We want to give them the opportunity to make sure they're looking back at their data and putting the money in the right place. We just need to get it into the budget, so we can hold it and then see.
These numbers don't make any sense. I don't understand how if the current year it's 1.75 million and next year it's 1.76 million, but there's $350,000 in new money. Doesn't add up. If you think 350,000 in
So
new money, it's
the difference
$10,000.
Right, that's a good point of understanding where the one time means just this 1 year of budget and then it goes away.
Right.
So it's.
In the current fiscal year, there was $340,000. Actually, I can't, you have to sort of, it's hard to calculate what's new money.
Yes.
Yeah, well, right, so the new money, if you think of it where you end up, perhaps to think of next year, you would take the 350 off of the 1,000,007, and that's your starting point for next year. And then whatever the ask is, whatever the strategic direction is of the library, then they will approach, is that one time, is it ongoing? Those are all part of the negotiations that we ask for next year.
And if it helps, Rod, in 24, we also got about 350 in one-time money, so you can see the jump there.
Right, yeah.
And then and maybe that's something we can do is break that out, so you can see this is the original budget ask and this is the one-time money. But we received it this year as well, so it looks a little more consistent by 2025 because they both had additional one-time. Does that speak a little bit to what you're?
Yeah. That's-
Yeah, any other?
So the capital fund, this is budgeted separately from the general fund operating budget. It's also primarily funded in tax support. There's a shift from the general fund each year to the capital fund to support COI projects. It's allocated in 3 categories. So you'll see these 3 in the budget itself. So capital improvement projects, and then there's ongoing repairs and maintenance and major equipment, which would include sorter. Projects span multiple years. So unlike the general fund, at the end of each fiscal year, we will calculate how much needs to be rebudgeted for ongoing projects and request a rebudget for that so that it will carry on year to year.
You may remember that from December. That was probably the first budget, information that you had with us, what is that budget?
Yep, so we'll be coming back to you again this coming December to talk about rebudgets.
So, and I know, I think it was last month, Sean Wilson talked a little bit about some of the capital improvements coming on. So, just as a quick note, so really what we're looking at as part of our capital requests for 25 was, of course, the auto sorter. So we are asking for not only funds to purchase the equipment of the sorter, but to make sure that we get the room ready to install. So both of those are included in that request. We have standing capital budget items that come up every year that just help us maintain the operations of our locations. So the furniture and the shelving replacements, those typically roll over year to year. We get a new influx of money each year just so we can continue to make sure our furniture is safe and operational, and that we're meeting the needs of our shelving requirements since we carry a lot of books. And then we work with the city to look at our fleet and make sure that our vans are operational and in the right state of repair or disrepair. So we do have slated for the 25 budget an additional van purchase to retire one of our vans. So that is all part of that capital funding that's being requested. And then when we get to the major repairs and maintenance, this is really what Sean was helping us speak about. So we have a request for $2 million to help complete some of the work here at the downtown, specifically on the first floor. That includes some internal work, things like electric, important pieces that let us operate, as well as, I'm using Sean's word, a little bit of a light touch on some of the technical pieces to make the building more operational. As we're doing the work, it just makes sense to do it together. And then we tend to carry our carpet replacement, just making sure that we are replacing carpet in the buildings as we normally do. So that's another just comes up year over year. And then the last is we are looking for a little bit of additional money out of the capital fund just to make sure we've got the funds we need to run the facility planning process. So strategic. Any questions on our capital budget?
Are they as cranky about vehicles, the city as they are with the state? Or
I don't know if I'd use the word cranky, but they really monitor it very closely.
State was the hardest. They pass $1 million things at the drop of a hat and get the ninth degree over.
I will say this, if you're listening, Ryan from Fleet, he has an amazing tracker that looks at age and repair and mileage and use. And so he's like, this is coming up. You need to look at this one. This looks pretty good. So it's been great. And we did purchase a van this year that has been extremely helpful for our careers to get out and about with the right safety things. So we're excited about this.
It's true, they have that replacement cycle that they strive for, but they will push a vehicle out if it's not really as worn as they think. Or others that are just beat up, they're like, yeah, it needs to be replaced sooner, perhaps.
We're pretty hard on our vans. They work hard.
All right, the Heritage Fund, it is contained of a couple of different parts. The library donations, those contributions come in with a designated purpose, and we will track those donations and also the expenses against them until those are fully spent out. The integrated library system, that was the growth fund where we were receiving monies toward a system replacement or upgrade. And then one thing to know about the Heritage Fund, it is carried over year to year in terms of the balance. When looking at the budget and how we set it up, we're just projecting a possible revenue of 156,000 up to a maximum of 250,000. If that were to hold true, it'd be a net reduction of 94,000. When looking at the previous years on Heritage, we typically spend close to what we bring in. So we don't normally go into a big net reduction, but that's just the possibility. And again, we're going to spend every designated donation until it is zeroed out. That designated purpose is zero. Then when looking at the integrated library growth fund, that 1,150,000 is a payout number. And that comes as part of the compliance piece for the new consortium lease agreement, where the new administrator will be managing those funds. Any questions on heritage?
Library donations, are those like the contributions that might come from the friends or the foundation, or are those individual donors contributing directly to the library? Or both?
Friends and Foundation.
It's that and the additional, yeah.
Is that number, in terms of, grown, shrunk, what's the trend?
Right. Hold on one second.
Is it in stuff you gave me and I forgot?
That's okay. In 2021, that was a COVID year. The revenues was around 76,000. That was a low year. Okay. By 2022, it was 182,000. So a boomerang, right? Then in 2023, 106,000. So you can see it kind of goes up and down, right? So when we're projecting revenue, we're just hitting a middle spot where we're like, okay, this is an estimate of what we think is possible. But what's interesting is, we're hearing the friends are having their sales again. Whereas in the COVID year, there were no sales of materials. So we knew that that source was not happening. Other fundraisers were not happening in the COVID year. But now it seems like there are more sales and more fundraising type efforts. So it's just a ballpark estimate. And then on the spending side, an example is in that 2021 COVID year where it was low on the revenue, we only spent out 79,000 that year. So we spent out very close to what we brought in, right? So that's just an example.
And between the friends and the foundation, is it, let's see, friends, what's foundation? I'm kind of confused.
Jerry, do you have a recollection? I didn't.
It depends on the year, because a lot of times the foundation, the friends are asks from us, but it depends on what. So it can be a split or it can be from the foundation friends. The foundation also needs to fundraise every year. So we would see,
So not all of the revenue that the foundation brings generates comes to. They have to vote on how much they're going to distribute to us based on needs. So
They're typically generated by a request from us and then they vote on it.
And we meet with the leadership at the beginning of the, to help with their planning, with what we think we're going to be requesting. And particularly with both organizations, Camille mentioned the capacity building that they're trying to do. We've also had to have some realistic requests, so it has been a bit of a discussion about what they think would be feasible. Obviously, the friends were looking at what they're going to do with their book sales, what other opportunities they have for fundraising. So it has been a little bit of a back and forth to make sure that we're requesting in the calendar year what they have confidence that they can use to donate to us.
So I really appreciate all of the partnership with the library. Yeah. So expressing just appreciation for the managers and the leadership at the library and their collaboration and partnership while we built the budget. Any other questions?
Thank you for the thorough presentation
Yes, it
and
was very,
answering all
very
of our
helpful.
questions. We really appreciate it. I think we need a motion to approve. At this point, it goes essentially back to the city through their process and then the city council
See, that's what I was like.
a little ways out,
Yeah.
but yeah.
They'll be.
This is
but this is the board's, and obviously they'll be approving the full budget.
Right.
So the library part of it.
I'm gonna read it.
Right.
I move to approve the fiscal year 25 proposed budget.
Okay, can we get a roll call?
Small, yes. Lemons,
Yes.
Sisneski,
Yes.
Pantera,
Yes.
all in favor, motion.
Okay. Our last item is the fiscal year 24 Ada Community Library Annexation Compensation Agreement. Which is helpful. Do you have somebody presenting this? or- And this is one that they've done every year. I can't remember if Ron and Richmond were here last time.
I don't believe so. So it'll be, processing, but half of you are familiar with it, and half of you are new to it, which is why we, Carrie put together the memo that sort of oversees that since 1994, because of the annexation, the city of Boise has done into Ada County, we have been reimbursing the Ada County Free Library District for revenue loss due to that annexation. This in particular allows them to provide library services in the libraries that city of Boise residents are using. So when we talk about the consortium and the benefit of it, this is us understanding that many of the city of Boise taxpayers that would have been paying to the county have been annexed over time.
So I presume this is an issue that falls into the notion. We had requests from West Boise residents for a new library. There is a branch from the Ada Community Library Association. In that zone. So how does that interplay work in terms of they're serving it? The community thinks we should be serving it. Should we put a library hypothetically into that community? Are we then still obligated to pay them because they also have a library there? It seems kind of.
I think that's a great question, and one of the things actually when Jill and Vicky came here, the first thing I did was pull out this giant map that has all the libraries labeled on, because one of the things their analysis is where are people going. You are correct, we have a library in that area of West Boise that taxpayers are paying into. Boise taxpayers are paying for that service, and I think that means something to look at, but I don't have I can't project.
No, I
future
understand.
might
Just
look
sort of, it's
it's
an interesting dilemma or
well,
I wouldn't call it a dilemma.
I think it is an interesting repercussion of the city of Boise for a long time really growing out through annexation. And we're not the only for the city of Boise service where there are places where there might be a fire station that's run by Ada County or Boise. So there are other places where that historical annexation, if who's paying or who's paying for and who's providing what services are constantly being considered and discussed. We constantly might be over something.
There are questions? We have a motion to approve.
Approve the fiscal year 24 Ada Community Library Annexation Compensation Agreement.
All right, second.
okay.
Can we get a roll call?
Small, yes. Lemons,
Yes.
Sisneski,
Yes.
Pantera,
Yes.
all in favor.
Okay, thank you for all the robust discussion and questions. Our next trustee to review vouchers is Brian Bunny. Did you already check with him? You're still on top of it. Okay, so Brian's good. Our next meeting date is July 10th. Anybody aware of issues with that date? Okay. That said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried, meeting's adjourned.